So we are. The stranger has just appeared at the tree, and Carter is about to go and meet his sister, and we are about to meet Sadie for the first time. Before I could even knock, Sadie opened the door. Late as usual, she said. She was holding her cat Muffin, who'd been a going away gift from Dad 6 years before. If a cat's called Muffin, what are you expecting it to be like?
It could be like a muffin colour.
Yes. So what would that be?
It would be like a light browny
Yeah.
colour.
Yeah, definitely. Poppy, what are you thinking?
Like has a lot of fur.
Yes, I'm imagining a sort of roundish shape. I'm not thinking of a skinny cat. I'm thinking of something huggable. Alfie? Could be, or raisins or chocolate chips or something, yes.
I think I might have like puffy fur.
Yeah.
Like the top of the...
Definitely. She had fuzzy yellow and black fur, like a miniature leopard, with alert yellow eyes and pointy ears that were too tall for her head. A silver Egyptian pendant dangled from her collar. She didn't look anything like a muffin. But Sadie had been little when she named her, so I guess you have to cut her some slack. Sadie hadn't changed much either since last summer. As I'm recording this, she's standing next to me glaring, so I'd better be careful how I describe her. You would never have guessed that she's my sister. First of all, she's been living in England so long, she has a British accent. Second, she takes after our mum, who's white. So Sadie's skin is much lighter than mine. She has straight caramel-coloured hair, not exactly blonde, but not brown, which she usually dyes with streaks of bright colours. That day it had red streaks down the left side. Her eyes are blue. I'm serious. Blue eyes, just like our mum's. She's only 12. We were wondering how old she was. We know Carter's 14. She's only 12, but she's exactly as tall as me, which is really annoying. She has chewing gum as usually, and she's dressed for her day out with Dad in battered jeans, a leather jacket, and combat boots, like she's going to a concert and was hoping to stomp on some people. She had headphones dangling round her neck in case we bored her. Okay, she didn't hit me, so I guess I did an okay job of describing her. Our plane was late, I told her. She popped a bubble, rubbed Muffin's head, and tossed the cat inside. Gran! Going out! From somewhere in the house, Grandma Faust said something I couldn't make out, probably, "Don't let them in!" Sadie closed the door and regarded me as if I were a dead mouse her cat had just dragged in. So, here you are again. Yep. Come on then, she sighed. Let's get on with it. That's the way she was. No, hi, how have you been the last 6 months? So glad to see you, or anything like that. But that was okay with me. When you only see each other twice a year, it's like being distant cousins rather than siblings. We have absolutely nothing in common except our parents. We trudged down the steps. I was thinking how she smelled like a combination of old people's house, bubblegum, when she stopped so abruptly I ran into her. Abruptly was one of our word of the weeks, wasn't it? Who's that? She asked. I'd almost forgotten about the dude in the trench coat. He and my dad were standing across the street next to the big tree, having what looked like a serious argument. Dad's back was turned so I couldn't see his face, but he gestured with his hands like he does when he's agitated. He gestured. Do we know what that means? Do a movement, yes. So if you gesture with your hands, you can show people what you want them to understand. And agitated, that's an adjective. What kind of feeling is agitated? Alex, you got an idea?
Like scared.
There's an element of nervousness in it, yes.
Kind of like what?
Yes, a bit irritated or, yeah. It's a mixture of feelings, isn't it? After all that, I've lost my place. The other guy scowled and shook his head. I dunno, he said. There's no edit on this, is there, Jack? I dunno, he said. He was there when we pulled up. He looks familiar. Sadie frowned like she was trying to remember. Come on! Dad wants us in the cab, I said, even though I knew it was no use. Sadie was already on the move. Instead of going straight across the street, she dashed up the sidewalk for half a block, ducking behind cars, then crossed to the opposite side and crouched low under a stone wall. She started sneaking out towards our dad. I didn't have much choice but to follow her example, even though it made me feel kind of stupid. 6 years in England, I muttered, and she thinks she's James Bond. Sadie swatted me without looking back and kept creeping forward. A couple more steps, and we were right behind the big dead tree. I could hear my dad on the other side saying, "Have to, Amos. You know it's the right thing." "No," said the other man, who must have been Amos. His voice was deep and even, very insistent. His accent was American. "If I don't stop you, Julius, they will. The poor hanker is shadowing you." Sadie turned to me and mouthed the words, what? I shook my head, just as mystified. "Let's get out of here," I whispered, because I figured we'd be spotted any minute and get in serious trouble. Sadie, of course, ignored me. "They don't know my plan," my father was saying. "By the time they figure it out—" "What about the kids?" Amos asked. The hairs stood up on the back of my neck. Show don't tell. "What about them?" "I've made arrangements to protect them," he said. "Besides, if I can't do this, we're all in trouble. Now back off." "Can't do that, Julius." "Then it's a duel you want?" Dad's tone turned deadly serious. "You could never beat me, Julius." I hadn't seen my dad get violent since the great spatula incident, and I wasn't anxious to see a repeat of that. But the two men seemed to be edging towards a fight. Before I could react, Sadie popped up and shouted, "Dad!" He looked surprised when she tackle-hugged him, but not nearly as surprised as the other guy, Amos. He backed up so quickly he tripped over his own coat. He'd taken off his glasses, and I couldn't help thinking that Sadie was right. He did look familiar, like a distant memory. "Gotta get going," he said. He straightened his fedora and lumbered down the road. Dad watched him go. He kept one arm protectively around Sadie and one hand inside the workbag slung over his shoulder. Finally, when Amos disappeared round the corner, Dad relaxed. He took his hand out of the bag and smiled at Sadie. "Hello, sweetheart." Sadie pushed away from him and crossed her arms. "Oh, now it's sweetheart, is it? You're late. Visitation day's nearly over. And what was that about? Who's that Amos? And what's the per ank?" Dad stiffened. He glanced at me like he was wondering how much we'd overheard. "It's nothing," he said, trying to sound upbeat. "I have a wonderful evening planned. Who'd like a private tour of the British Museum?" Sadie slumped in the back of the taxi between Dad and me. "I can't believe it," she grumbled. "One evening together and you want to do research?" Dad tried for a smile. "Sweetheart, it'll be fun. The curator of the Egyptian collection personally invited—" "Right. Big surprise." Sadie blew a strand of red-streaked hair out of her face. "Christmas Eve, and we're going to see some mouldy old relics from Egypt. Do you ever think about anything else?" Dad didn't get mad. He never gets mad at Sadie. He just stared out of the window at the darkening sky and the rain. "Yes," he said quietly, "I do." Whenever Dad got quiet like that and stared off into nowhere, I knew he was thinking about our mum. The last few months it had been happening a lot. I'd walk into our hotel room and find him with his cell phone in his hands, Mum's picture smiling up at him from the screen, her hair tucked under a headscarf, her blue eyes startlingly bright against the desert background. Or we'd be at some dig site. I'd see Dad staring at the horizon, and I'd know he was remembering how he'd met her, two young scientists in the Valley of the Kings on a dig to discover a lost tomb. Dad was an Egyptologist, Mum was an anthropologist, looking for ancient DNA. He told me the story 1,000 times. Our taxi sneaked its way along the banks of the Thames, just past Waterloo Bridge. Dad tensed. "Driver," he said, "stop here a minute." The cabbie pulled over on the Victoria Embankment. "What is it, Dad?" I asked. He got out of the cab like he hadn't heard me. When Sadie and I joined him on the sidewalk, he was staring up at Cleopatra's Needle. In case you've never seen Cleopatra's Needle, it's an obelisk. It's like a pillar. Not a needle. It's more or less like a pillar with a bit of a pointy top on
Like
it.
a
Some of you,
pencil.
if you've ever driven into London, there's a bridge you go over, and then you see one when you go over that bridge. You're nodding wisely. It's about 70 feet tall, so 3 feet makes one of these, so 70 feet tall would be about 22, 23 of those metres deep. So it's high. You could drive right by it and not even realise you'd just passed something that was 1,000 years older than the City of London itself. God! Sadie walked round in a frustrated circle. Do we have to stop for every monument? Dad stared at the top of the obelisk. I had to see it again, he murmured, where it happened. A freezing wind blew off the river. I wanted to get back in the cab, but my dad was really starting to worry me. I'd never seen him so distracted. What, Dad? I asked. What happened here? The last place I saw her.
Oh, great.
Maybe we'll leave it there because the leaf blowers have come.